Earlier today, Cyberpunk 2077 got a new update. This is patch 1.63, a largely bug-fixing patch, but also one with some pretty significant and notable changes. The update seemed to be around 30 gigabytes on consoles, while being a bit over 1 gigabyte on PC. The size difference being due to how patches are applied. On PC, you're really just downloading the new files, while on consoles, you're re-downloading entire archives, including a bunch of old files that weren't changed. And if you do want to get some of these smaller patches on PC, Cyberpunk 2077 is 50% off on GOG right now, or even 30% off if you buy it bundled with Phantom Liberty. That bundle's cheaper than if you buy them separately, and I get a bit of a kickback if you purchase using my affiliate link down below. So the biggest part of this patch by far were some of the quest tweaks and even some of the pretty significant quest fixes that were distributed, such as during the final mission with Search and Destroy. Takamura will actually put some effort into hiding now instead of just awkwardly standing out in the open as Arasaka raids the room. One really nice fix is around some gigs staying in the undiscovered phase as you approach them. These would basically get stuck like this, so even as you ran up to the gig and tried to activate it, things would stay exactly the same, blocking your progress on that gig, as well as several issues where you would just randomly flatline during certain quests, so as you're attempting to play a quest, you would just die abruptly. And though there were quite a few major changes with this one, there was also some minor things like mirrors not functioning properly during certain gigs. It definitely feels like they had a multi-pronged approach with these fixes. Some of them were just minor tweaks or improvements, some genuinely fixing progress blocking bugs, but also just some general quest bugginess with spawns and the like. So though I'm only highlighting a few of them, there were definitely numerous quest fixes shipped today. It was quite a big improvement. And though quest fixes was the bulk of the update, it definitely wasn't everything. A long time issue that I didn't even realize was an issue that was fixed is now while you're transferring money or data, it will no longer show the enemy hack in progress indicator. This was the strange one where basically anytime you would transfer something, it would say you're being hacked by an enemy. I think a lot of people just thought this was a quirk of V's operating system, or really just a quirk of the game overall and not actually a bug, but it seems like it was a bug, or at least something CDPR wanted to change, so now as you transfer funds from one person to another, it'll simply say that instead of saying you're being hacked. There's this frustrating bug where you are unable to use devices after opening your minimap, but thankfully that has been fixed. And one of the biggest fixes is around DLSS flicker. There's this pretty big bug on PC where when you had DLSS on, there would just be some hardcore flickering or even at times artifacting around you. And as soon as you turned off DLSS, that flickering would immediately disappear. Testing this myself, I definitely noticed that these flickers are largely gone now while you do have DLSS on, which is going to be huge for NVIDIA users out there in particular since so many people are relying on DLSS to use the new path tracing. Things weren't exactly perfect, but again, a huge improvement and a major step in the right direction. Although, if you are somebody fortunate enough to be using path tracing, there was a bug with that also that was fixed. This is that new ray tracing overdrive mode, and sometimes when you had this on, some of these surface textures would be affected and basically just show extreme artifacting or have buggy textures and look really rough. This would kind of take you out of it as you're trying to play on the highest end mode with the crazy new visual settings, and some of the visuals just weren't all that great. For my testing and even just reading a bit online, it seems like this too has been largely fixed with this update. I recorded this entire video with path tracing on, and I did not notice any of that artifacting popping up again. Although for some of you, you perhaps will be able to turn on path tracing after this update, as it also improved performance of DLSS frame generation on AMD CPUs. This is going to be a very specific group of people, but if you are somebody who does have a 4000 series NVIDIA GPU, but an AMD CPU, there are a couple of issues when trying to use DLSS 3.0. Partially, that's going to be your FPS. In my testing on a 4090 and a 5900X, this was definitely not a game-changing update, but I definitely noticed a slight bump in my overall FPS. It felt like previously in areas where I would drop under 100 FPS, I was now staying a bit above it. So with this update and my AMD CPU, I almost noticed a 5 to 10% performance boost overall, at least in my limited testing. And the far more impactful aspect of this is, it seems like it largely got rid of some of the stuttering issues that I had while using frame generation. In particular, there were sometimes issues when opening the map and closing it that seem to have largely been removed thanks to this update, which is actually really nice. But what is likely to end up being the most impactful aspect of this update, outside of mods breaking, is going to be one that just applies to Xbox users. Now, the number of available save slots on Xbox is going to be 20 for manual saves, as well as 10 for point of no return saves. And if you exceeded that number, like if you already have over 20 manual saves, CDPR does say players who have a number of saves that exceeds the new save limit will need to delete some saves to be able to create new ones. And based off doing some digging online, what it seems like happened here was there was a bug that's been in Cyberpunk for a while where if you were playing on Xbox, you were able to create over 20 manual save slots, even though you weren't supposed to be able to. If you look at all of the documentation online from CDPR officially, it says that there is supposed to be a 20 save limit, but I guess perhaps that limit wasn't properly being enforced by the game, so a lot of people report having potentially hundreds of manual saves, even though again, you weren't supposed to be able to. Well, unfortunately, the next time those people want to play Cyberpunk, they're going to have to delete many of those manual saves that have been previously made, and it does seem like this isn't actually just random, as with this update they also addressed an issue affecting performance on the Xbox Series X and S, where basically after playing for an extended period of time, performance would degrade in Cyberpunk 2077. It seemed like this was directly related to the save game issue, where if you were playing for too long, the play session's performance would just generally start to degrade due to how many save games you had. This has actually been an issue with other games on consoles as well, so it really seems like this is just CDPR fixing that. So although again, if you have a bunch of saves, this might be pretty annoying to try and clear through a bunch of them, but hopefully it means better performance over longer play sessions as well. Now when launching Cyberpunk 2077, there's going to be a little ad for Phantom Liberty in the main menu where you can purchase it, and one final change that may get users excited but isn't actually that big of a deal is they allow deploying mods from a listing file. This is going to be for ReddMod on PC, and basically the old method of deploying mods would start to run into problems if you had a very large load order, if you had a ton of mods installed. So this update will make it so a file is simply read rather than having your entire list of mods passing through the command line each time you launch the game. So in the past, if you had issues with larger load orders, this could potentially be a fix for some problems around that, but for most players out there, even though I saw some excitement around mods being mentioned, you'll probably not notice any major differences. Well, except for one, and that's of course that many of your mods are now going to be broken. Cyberpunk got an update, so mods did break, so you'll need to wait for many of those core mods like Tweak XL or Archive XL to be updated. Thankfully, this was a bit of a smaller patch, so we're already seeing some mods get updated, like Cyber Engine Tweaks has already been updated, and if you're somebody who was playing modded Cyberpunk and is now trying to launch the game and unable to, getting errors like this, that's just a problem with some of your mods being outdated. So you can either delete all of the mods you had installed, or even just do a full fresh install, or you can wait a couple of days for things to be updated, or perhaps even just a day or two. A lot of these updates have been shipping out pretty fast as of late. But of course, the third major option being you downgrade to the older version of the game, which you can do incredibly easily on GOG. So in general, a bit of a smaller patch, but still a really nice one. We got quite a few really nice bug and glitch fixes, and I feel like it's a good patch to hold us over fixing some of the major issues around progress blocking or even some of those visual problems. So for those of us who are still going to be playing in between now and Phantom Liberty, we won't have as buggy of an experience. But speaking of patch 1.7 and Phantom Liberty, we may even have a release window for that. Phantom Liberty is dropping on September 26, 2023, and due to global release timings, I wouldn't be shocked if many of us will actually be playing on the 25th of September, not the 26th. But it seems like they're still targeting a release date of patch 1.7 before Phantom Liberty, but only barely. It seems like due to legal requirements, when CDPR changes the system requirements for Cyberpunk 2077, which is happening, so basically right now, if you own Cyberpunk 2077, the next major free update, patch 1.7, is going to make the game harder to run. If you're just at the minimum system requirements right now, you may no longer be able to run Cyberpunk after the next update, or at least it may run significantly worse. And basically, as a part of doing this, since these system requirements are changing, CDPR needs to give 90 days notice. It seems like this is a full-on legal requirement, which would mean that at earliest, patch 1.7 can ship on September 11th, 90 days after the original announcement of these changes on June 11th. It's a bit of an odd one where CDPR remains adamant that apparently, yes, patch 1.7 is coming before Phantom Liberty, but if it's literally only coming 2 weeks before, you have to imagine most people would just rather wait for the new content. Perhaps they want to get it out a couple of weeks earlier just so people could start new save games, perhaps play a bit before you can jump into the new Phantom Liberty stuff, but also considering this is just a couple of weeks after Starfield, it could be a pretty busy time for a lot of gamers. You have Starfield Early Access on August 31st, patch 1.7 on September 11th, and then Phantom Liberty on September 25th or 26th. And if you're interested in that, I'm going to have a video out detailing all of the known Phantom Liberty changes, so make sure to stay tuned for that.